Hello and welcome to Digitech. Today we're going to do a personal favorite of mine, the repeater, in JavaScript. So all it's going to do is allow the user to write in something, and then you click a button, and then the page will repeat whatever they said. It's going to teach us a little bit about input from the user in terms of text, as well as button input, and also outputting stuff to the page. So as usual, I've created a folder, an empty one, just on the desktop. It's up to you where you keep your code, and then open that folder in Visual Studio Code through the File menu. First file to create is the HTML to interface with our JavaScript. It's going to be a pretty bare bones HTML file with just the absolute minimum of code that we need in order to have a decently rendered page in the browser and interact with our program to be able to test it and learn a little bit about it. Just creating a heading for the repeater, and then using the live server extension in VS Code, opening up in the browser so we can see our changes as we go. Looks like it's working. Live server comes with a live reload feature, so I'm just going to double check that by creating a paragraph and seeing if I save it, it should appear in the browser straight away. So everything's ready to start writing. Well, first things first is to connect our JavaScript. As usual, we'll be using the jQuery library. So the first thing is to connect to the jQuery library using the CDN. And we'll use the latest version, uncompressed, because we don't really care about performance at this stage. Copying the link, and we'll paste into VS Code. As usual, the cross origin and stuff, we don't really, it's distracting. So we're just going to remove it, because the main thing that we care about is just being able to access those helper functions. And all we need for that is the source attribute. Next file to create is our JavaScript file. Just going to call it the repeater.js. And the very first line is just some testing code, a console.log to indicate to us that the file has started. So as soon as the page connects to this JavaScript file, it'll log in the console a message saying the repeater script has started. And in order to get the HTML and the JavaScript connected together so the browser knows what to run, I'm going to do a new script tag with the source pointing directly to our new file and adding that defer keyword so that it doesn't run that file until the end, until after it's loaded everything else. So going to the developer tools in the menu for the browser, we can have a look in the console and our messages there. So now that everything's connected and we've got the structure ready to go, we can start writing the repeater. I'm going to start off with a label. I'm going to write an input where the user can type in what they want to have repeated. So the label just contains some text of what, like a prompt to the user. And then an input. We're going to give it the ID text input so that when we're doing it in JavaScript, we can tell what that ID reference is. In this case, it's input of the type text. And the second thing is a button. So it's another form of input from the user, more of a clickable thing, and this is what's going to kind of kick off our code. So when they click that btn repeat, that's when we want our JavaScript to start doing stuff. And the last thing is some output. So this is where whatever they've typed into that input should appear when they click the button. So the general workflow is going to be write something into the field, click repeat, and whatever is in that field will then be at the bottom of the page in that paragraph. So the start of our code is going to be what kicks everything off, and in this case it is the clicking of the button. So the $ brackets quotes #button repeat connects to our button, and then we do .click to indicate we want this code to run when that button gets clicked. Then there's some brackets and stuff. This is actually what's called an anonymous function. So if you're worried about how many functions you're writing, this counts as one of them. The first thing is to create a variable. So this is just going to hold some text for us. At this stage, I'm not going to try and connect the code to the input. We're just going to use some testing text here, something, something, something. And we'll try and output that to the page because it's something that we've done in previous projects and we kind of know how to do it. So we've got $ brackets quotes, hashtag text output. So that connects to our paragraph. And then the dot text indicates I want to set the text to this. And instead of writing the paragraph in there directly, we can just give that variable name that we created in the line above. And now when we click the button, it sets it to be that variable. So now that we've got it setting it from the variable, what we might want to do is indicate where that phantom text came from. So I'm going to give it a prefix and say you said and then the text that's in that variable. It's a bit more of a nicer user experience rather than this random something 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 popping out of nowhere with no indication of what it actually was. We're just using what's called concatenation there. So you said is in quotes and then plus the text, which is also of a string type, so it's text as well. But now we're going to connect the text variable to the actual input. So we use $ brackets and quotes, text input, and then .val is going to give us whatever is actually in there when the button is clicked. So if I type something in there and click the button, .val grabs that something, puts it into the variable, and then the next line of code spits it back out onto the page. And we can test it with a bunch of different things. Just make sure it's working properly. No errors in the console log or any problems looking there. Last thing is to write some comments just to explain what the code is doing. So that first line with the dot click indicates that the code in the brackets is what should happen when the button gets clicked. The first thing to happen is to get the text from the input and store it in that variable text. And the last thing is to take the text that's stored in that variable and stick it into the paragraph. So we have, in order, a click, getting the input, and then taking the input and putting it as output. That'll do it for the repeater. Nice and simple, but covers some really useful bases.